Imagine that you find yourself holding an ancient manuscript that challenges everything you believe to be true about time and traditions. What if the calendar we are familiar with is not just erroneous, but is a deliberate distortion of an ancient system, specifically designed to disconnect us from the natural and cosmic rhythms that govern the universe? How would our perception of life and time change if we realized that we were being played with, leading us away from a deeper spiritual understanding of existence? This is precisely the challenge posed by the Bible of 1775. Why did many ancient cultures start the year in March instead of January? What is the reason for the exclusion of the 13th month, which was once an important part of the calendar built in accordance with lunar cycles? Why was Sunday declared the first day of the week, shifting us away from a system that likely reflected a more ancient cosmic order? These questions raise troubling doubts. What else are we missing or distorting in our understanding of time and spirituality? Forgotten rhythms. Why did the new year start in March? The idea of considering March as the first month of the year is not just a historical curiosity. It is a window into the ancient civilization's conception of time, natural rhythms and spiritual cycles that guided them on a path of harmony with the cosmos. In ancient Rome before the reforms, by Julius Caesar, March or Martius was the first month of the year associated with the god Mars. Mars symbolized not only war but also fertility, agriculture, and renewal, which the Romans celebrated with the onset of spring. This period, when nature awakened to new life, it marked the beginning of the agricultural cycle that sustained society. Nevertheless, the origins of this tradition lie deeper, tracing back to ancient cultures that celebrated the spring equinox as a sacred moment of rebirth, when the balance between light and darkness symbolized the renewal of life. For them, the equinox was not just a natural phenomenon, but also a time when society itself renewed its commitments to the gods, nature, and each other. Ancient civilizations believed that March, as the beginning of the year, allowed people to attune to cosmic rhythms and maintain harmony with nature. Besides Rome, the tradition of celebrating the new year in March was preserved in Persia, where Nowruz, a festival of Zoroastrian origin, still symbolizes the victory of light over darkness, the renewal of nature, and the beginning of a new cycle. This proves that the initial month of the year was not a coincidence. It reflected a profound connection between time and spirituality, marking both physical and spiritual renewals. The introduction of the Julian calendar by Julius Caesar in 46 BC changed the course of time, establishing January as the beginning of the year. This shift was driven by the desire to align the calendar with the solar cycle, but it also reflected changes in cultural priorities, placing Janus, the god of transitions, at the center. Janus, known as the god of doors and gates, with his two-faced figure symbolized the past and the future, establishing a new emphasis on political and social stability, as opposed to agricultural and natural cycles. However, this transition to the January calendar was neither immediate nor universal. In Europe, especially in religious and agricultural communities, March remained the beginning of the year for a long time. For example, in England until 1752. The New Year was celebrated on March 25th, on Annunciation Day, when, according to tradition, the conception of Jesus occurred. This day is also deeply connected with the beginning of the agricultural cycle, when the earth was coming back to life and people felt a renewal, both natural and spiritual. The adoption of the Gregorian calendar in 1582 established January as the beginning of the year, but this met with resistance, as the shift from March to January symbolized a move away from natural rhythms to an artificial structure based on political and economic interests. This calendar shift changed our perception of time and led to a transformation of our spiritual and cultural awareness. By adopting a calendar that begins in January, society not only changed its temporal structure, but also its understanding of humanity's place in the universe. Our connection with the natural cycles which once governed our lives has changed. The changes in the calendar are not only practical in nature, they reflect a cultural and spiritual evolution, during which the connection with natural cycles gradually shifted to a perception of time as linear, predictable, and easily controllable, at the expense of a more organic and cyclical understanding of the world. Why did Sunday become the first day? The hidden motives of an ancient transformation. The choice of Sunday as the first day of the week was not just a change in the order of days. This decision had a colossal impact on the formation of religious thought, cultural identity, and the perception of time. To understand the origins of this change, we need to return to the beginning of the Christian era, when the distinctions between Judaism and the emerging Christianity began to take on distinct forms, not only in religious doctrines, but also in everyday practice. In Judaism, the Sabbath or Shabbat has always been the seventh day of the week, a sacred day of rest and spiritual renewal, whose roots go back to biblical times. This day, celebrated since ancient times, symbolized the completion of creation and was the embodiment of the covenant between the Jewish people and God. The holiness of the Sabbath was reflected in the deep tradition of spiritual reflection, rest, and renewal that concluded each week. For Christians, however, Sunday gained special significance because it was the day of Jesus' resurrection, an event that became the foundation of the Christian faith and symbolized the beginning of a new creation. Sunday became the day of Eucharistic gatherings and the celebration of new life in Christ. The transition from Saturday to Sunday happened gradually, varying from region to region, until over time, especially after Emperor Constantine's conversion, Sunday became the official day of rest and worship. Constantine's conversion and his establishment of Sunday as the official day of rest throughout the Roman Empire reinforced this transformation. On a spiritual level, this shifted the focus from the traditional Jewish covenant to the Christian one, from the celebration of rest after creation to resurrection and new life in Christ. Socially, it further distanced the Christian community from Judaism, emphasizing its independent identity. But there were also political motives behind this change. Before converting to Christianity, Constantine was devoted to the worship of Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. Sunday, already considered the day of the sun, became an important symbol of the synthesis and strengthening of Christian customs, which facilitated the integration of pagans into the Christian society. This merging of religious practices contributed to the creation of a new social and spiritual order, where Sunday became the central day of worship and rest. It united both Christians and those who retained elements of ancient pagan customs, serving as a bridge between different beliefs and forming a common weekly rhythm. The shift towards Sunday also influenced the perception of time and the very structure of the weekly cycle. Saturday, governed by Saturn, was considered a day of reflection, completion, and discipline, symbolizing the end of one phase and the transition to another. In turn, Sunday, under the patronage of the sun, brought the energy of renewal and creation, setting a new tone in the cyclical perception of time. This transition from Saturday to Sunday represented not just a change in the day of worship, but also a transformation of the energetic dynamics of the week, shifting the focus from completion and rest to beginning and active creation. Such a shift reinforced the symbolism of Christ's resurrection and represented renewal as an important aspect of religious and social life. Interestingly, some Christian denominations, such as Seventh-day Adventists, continue to observe the Sabbath as the true day of rest, adhering to the belief that this is the original divine ordinance. They question the validity of historical changes, emphasizing that the choice of Sunday may have been influenced not only by spiritual but also by political motives. The choice of Sunday as the first day of the week not only reformatted the structure of the week but also impacted the public perception of work and rest. In Western culture, this decision became the basis for new work and rest rhythms, where Sunday is the beginning of the week, not its end. It indicates that spiritual renewal should precede the start of a new cycle of tasks and duties. Such a restructuring of the concept of time emphasized the role of Sunday as a starting point, reflecting a worldview where a new beginning is more important than completion. This temporal reorganization had a profound impact on cultural and social customs, defining everything from the work week to the structure of leisure and religious rituals. A fundamental shift that shifted the focus to Sunday. As a day of spiritual renewal and rest, it changed how people perceive and use their time, showing how religious practices can influence social norms and even cultural understanding of time. This shift demonstrated the power of religion in shaping everyday experiences and perceptions of time, showing how calendar and cultural changes can reflect a deeper evolution of society, the mystery of the 13th month, and the lost connection with nature. The reference to the 13-month calendar in the Bible of the 17th century, may seem like a minor detail, but it reveals the perspective of ancient cultures on time and the cosmos. This system, built on lunar cycles, reflected a closer connection with the natural forces governing life. To understand its depth, it is worth considering how this calendar functioned and why it was left in the past. Lunar calendars used by the Sumerians, Egyptians, Babylonians, and other ancient civilizations were based on the phases of the moon. Each lunar month lasted approximately 29.5 days, and the entire lunar year was about 354 days. Therefore, to synchronize it with the 365-day solar cycle, a buffer to 13th month was added. This additional month was not only a technical solution, but also a deeply symbolic element, enhancing the connection with the cycles of nature and the cosmos. The 13 lunar months symbolize the connection with the rhythms of life, growth, decay, and rebirth that all living things undergo. The moon, changing its phases, became a symbol of constant renewal necessary for harmony in these cultures. Each month carried a special energy, affecting not only nature but also the inner world of a person. The ancients believed that following the lunar cycles allowed them to live in harmony with the rhythms of the universe, maintaining harmony and inner balance. The number 13 in this context deserves special attention. Modern society often considers it ominous, but for ancient cultures, it was a sacred number symbolizing transformation and rebirth. In Mayan culture, for example, the Tzolk'in calendar, used for religious and ceremonial purposes, consisted of 13 cycles of 20 days and set important dates for rituals and coronations. The transition to a 12-month solar calendar was not just a simplification. The abandonment of lunar cycles may have been associated with the growing influence of monotheistic religions, which, unlike ancient beliefs, were suspicious of pagan traditions. This abandonment was not just a change of the calendar. It reflected a break with the natural rhythms that had guided humanity for millennia. By switching to the solar calendar, we lost a deep connection with the lunar cycles, losing the natural dimension in life and spirituality. Such a break also changed our view of the world, making it predictable and controllable. But at what cost? Changes in the calendar system led to our connection with natural cycles, which was once the foundation of our way of life and spiritual practices, gradually losing its primary role. The abandonment of the 13-month lunar calendar was not merely a pragmatic step. It reflected a profound cultural transformation during which the cyclical perception of time was replaced by a linear and orderly representation. Instead of the flow of time, endlessly renewing with each lunar cycle, the solar calendar set clear beginnings and ends, which contributed to the formation of a worldview where time is perceived as irreversible progress, and not as a series of births, growth, death, and rebirth. The influence of the 13-month calendar on ancient society was more multifaceted than it might seem. The lunar phases, a powerful source of inspiration for spiritual and astrological practices, were considered the key to a better understanding of cosmic rhythms. In these cycles, the ancients found echoes of nature and their own existence. Each month, starting with the new moon, was filled with unique energies capable of influencing a person's mental and emotional state. This close connection with the lunar cycles allowed ancient cultures to live in harmony with the cosmos, which was reflected not only in their daily lives, but also in their spiritual rituals and calendar celebrations. Abandoning the lunar calendar was not just a change in the measurement system, but also a transformation in humanity's relationship with the very concept of time. The shift in calendar focus brought with it deeper cultural changes. The adoption of Sunday as a day of rest, for example, became not just a religious practice, but an important symbol of time organization, which influenced the perception of weekdays, the weekly cycle, and society's life as a whole. Question: was this a decision capable of demonstrating? How can church norms transform cultural consciousness and the perception of time at the level of an entire civilization? In the 17th century Bible, one can find traces of a 13-month calendar, which at first glance may seem like a forgotten artifact. However, its existence underscores how ancient cultures harmoniously integrated their way of life with cosmic cycles. These 13 lunar months represented much more than just a convenient tool for measuring time. They were a symbol of a close connection with nature and the cosmos. The ancient Sumerians, Egyptians, and Babylonians, for example, followed lunar calendars, understanding that each month, corresponding to the phases of the moon, symbolized stages of growth, fullness, and waning, in which they saw a reflection of the universe itself. Each lunar cycle not only determined specific agricultural or social activities, but was also considered a time for spiritual reflection and renewal. The 13-month calendar, following the lunar phases, symbolized the unity of humans with nature. In the beliefs of those who followed this calendar, a life attuned to the lunar rhythms was perceived as a harmonious existence, in accordance with the universe. This system reminded people of the cyclic nature of all living things and likely reinforced a sense of connection with the cosmos. The number 13, which is often perceived as unlucky in modern culture, was once a symbol of sacred power, transformation, and rebirth. In ancient traditions, the number 13 played an important role, reminding people of the connection with lunar cycles and natural rhythms. For example, in the Mayan Solkin calendar, consisting of 13 cycles, of 20 days totaling 260 days. This number was used to determine auspicious dates for conducting important ceremonies and religious rituals. The introduction of the 12-month calendar and the abandonment of the 13th month might not have been merely for convenience, but a reflection of a spiritual and cultural transition that influenced our perception of time and connection with nature. When humanity adopted the solar calendar, it began to move away from lunar cycles, which were considered less accurate and harder to control. Monotheistic religions, with their often suspicious attitude towards pagan traditions, may also have played a role in marginalizing the lunar calendar and its 13th month. This led to losses in spiritual culture and a change in the perception of the world, where the previous connection with natural rhythms and cosmic cycles was lost. For ancient cultures, the lunar phases determined the best time for planting, harvesting, and conducting rituals. Each phase of the moon had unique energies that affected plant growth and the emotional state of humans. Living in harmony with these cycles allowed ancient cultures to adjust their actions to natural and cosmic rhythms. The abandonment of the 13th month disrupted this synchronization, replacing it with a linear structure of time, where the beginning and end are separated by clear boundaries. This change contributed to the formation of a worldview in which time is viewed as a straight progression, rather than as an eternal cycle, as was suggested in lunar calendars. Such a perception of time also influenced astrological practices. Each lunar month was associated with specific astrological and planetary influences, affecting people's events and decisions. The transition to a 12-month solar calendar could distort these connections, distancing astrological practices from natural cycles and reducing their accuracy. This disconnect led to astrological practices, which depend on the subtle rhythms of the cosmos, losing some of their power and significance. The question of the possibility of returning to a 13-month calendar presents an exciting prospect. If society once again adopts a calendar based on lunar cycles, it could restore the lost connection with natural rhythms, promoting a more harmonious interaction with the surrounding world. The restoration of the lunar calendar could impact not only agriculture, but also mental health, spirituality, and social structure. Returning to a cyclical perception of time, based on the idea of the eternal cycle of life, would help society move beyond a linear perception of the world and turn towards a more holistic, organic understanding of existence, as we have lost our connection with eternity. The 1775 Bible, with its enigmatic interpretations of time, the calendar, and sacred days. It is not just a historical text. It may carry layers of esoteric knowledge capable of altering our usual perception of reality. Why did the creators of this version of the Bible make such radical changes to the system of measuring time? Could there be an intention behind these changes? A desire to lead us away from the great cosmic truth, or even to conceal ancient knowledge accessible only to the chosen few? To approach an understanding of this version, it is important to consider the context of the era. The end of the 18th century. A time when esoteric and occult movements flourished, and secret societies like the Freemasons and Rosicrucians held significant influence. These orders sought to preserve ancient knowledge, which included an understanding of time cycles, cosmic energies, and a profound connection of man with the universe. Could they, intentionally or not, have influenced the structure of the Bible of the 18th century, embedding esoteric truths that were later forgotten or disguised? The question arises, could the transition to a 13-month calendar or the elevation of Sunday as the first day of the week be part of a plan to manipulate cosmic energies? In esotericism, the number 13 is associated with transformation, rebirth, and contact with the unknown. In ancient cultures, this number held sacred significance, symbolizing a connection with the mysteries of existence, but later it became marginalized and even demonized. What if humanity had preserved a 13-month calendar? Perhaps we would live in a world more connected with natural and cosmic rhythms, where harmony and the flow of energies would be more natural. And, more importantly, who benefited from the transition to a 12-month calendar? Perhaps this shift was aimed at disconnecting humans from the great truth, keeping us in a cycle of delusions and spiritual oblivion. Hidden symbolism is also evident in the shift of the sacred day from Saturday to Sunday. In esotericism, Saturn, which governs Saturday, symbolizes karmic cleansing and the difficult lessons that contribute to spiritual growth. The transition to Sunday, a day governed by the sun, can be seen as an attempt to shift the focus from deep, introspective lessons to a more superficial perception of spirituality. This transition might have influenced people's perception of their spirituality, possibly weakening their development on a deeper level and detaching them from the internal transformations that Saturn could offer. Could this shift in time and perception be not a coincidence, but the result of a complex design created to manage the perception of time and, consequently, the spiritual orientation of humanity? From the perspective of esoteric schools, the system of time is not only a tool for measurement, but also a means, shaping our consciousness. Our connection with natural cycles has changed, which once deeply governed the life and spiritual experience of our ancestors. Changes in the calendar reflect not only practical necessity, but also cultural and spiritual transformation. This evolution shows how humanity gradually distanced itself from harmony with natural rhythms, replacing them with a linear perception of time. Predictable, orderly, and at first glance, controllable. This representation of time simplified social and economic processes, but perhaps deprived us of the sense of cyclicality that allowed the ancients to feel part of a great cosmic order. Today, following this linear calendar, we increasingly perceive ourselves as separately existing, confined within the boundaries of the workday, the week. In the past, each turn of the season, each solstice or equinox reminded people of their connection to something greater, of the recurring cycles of growth, decline, and rebirth. The modern concept of time, while simplifying life, distances us from this fundamental connection, creating a sense of disconnection and alienation from nature. The adopted changes have also affected our spiritual journey, as natural cycles helped people structure not only their physical lives, but also their spiritual practices, rituals, and moments of self-discovery. Perhaps returning to a more organic perception of time could help us restore lost connections and bring harmony back into our lives, allowing us to once again realize ourselves as part of the great universe, moving in eternal cycles. Updates and balance. The 1775 Bible. With its mysterious features and hidden changes, it offers us a chance to look at time and spirituality from a new, deeply meaningful perspective. The transition from March to January as the start of the year, the shift of Sunday to the position of the first day of the week, and the abandonment of the ancient 13-month calendar are not just historical adjustments, but significant changes that reflect the removal of humanity from the natural and spiritual cycles that once guided its path. Delving into these revelations, we begin to ponder how much our modern practices align with the universal rhythms that govern the cosmos. Perhaps now, more than ever, it is time to reconsider how we perceive the passage of time, what rituals we fill it with, and how we perceive our connection to the cosmos. These discoveries invite us to return to a long-lost spiritual authenticity and to harmony with the natural rhythms that can awaken in us a profound sense of connection with the cosmos. Let this discovery become a starting point for re-evaluating our traditions and systems, and perhaps inspire us to return to a more organic, cosmically attuned approach to life. What other hidden, forgotten order is waiting for its time to re-emerge and bring us back to our true purpose?